on legislation, okay? Now, so it says, so when a governing body is drafting their code of conduct, they've got to take into consideration the prescript of the Constitution, number one, the SASA, talks about this act being the SASA, and any other provincial legislation which we would have. In our province, anyone knows which provincial legislation we have guiding the code of conduct? The Provincial Learner Code of Conduct, 2015 one. Anyone's at sight of that? 2015 Code of Conduct? Show of hands. You're not alone. I'll tell you why. When we've been doing the workshops, and previously as well, it's odd that we have a provincial code of conduct that guides schools on how they should draft their respective codes of conduct. And lots of schools, school principals, are not aware of it. I do have a copy that I'm going to flag just now, right? So, you've got to look at the provincial code of conduct. We have a 2015 code of conduct. Now, with the BELA, okay, with the amendment of the BELA, my colleague here in governance and management, we're going to be amending the provincial code of conduct. We have to amend it to be in line with the BELA. But nevertheless, it's not completely outdated, and because that is the only document we have at present, without the amendment, we're still using it, okay? So, a code of conduct must take into account, these are the amendments. When a governing body is drafting their code of conduct, when you're going to empower them, you need to ensure that they take into account the diverse cultural beliefs, okay, the religious observances and medical circumstances of the learners at the school. These were the changes brought about by the BELA. Now, what informed these changes? Who remembers, well, I think I did that with you when we did it at Lyndhurst. The no-stud case. Umlazi district case, the no-stud case, remember? And what did the Concord rule? We got to take that into consideration, cultural beliefs, etc. Okay, so we also had other cases, right, where you had learners that needed to wear their fez to school, or they needed to have a beard, right? And some of the outlying districts, one in particular, no names mentioned, we had an instance where they were not allowing the boys of the Muslim origin to have their beards. And that matter came to us before, I think you came there, Mr. Dlamini, Advocate Dlamini, and that matter came to us. So when we're drafting our code of conduct, we cannot even have our code of conduct to promote one particular religion, okay? Because remember, we are part of, we sign treaties, human rights, the Constitution, etc. So we got to keep that in, right? So I spoke about the no-stud case. We had another one about the girls wearing pants under their skirts, right? Can your code of conduct allow that? So if you look at the code of conduct, if you look at the culture of your learners at your school, right, then you would advise your governing bodies accordingly. Okay, so I'm just only going to touch on the amendments, right? The rest has been there, but we'll go. So, your code of conduct must have an exemption clause. So it's like, you know, okay, that exemption clause, before I hold my thought on that, must contain an exemption provision, the code of conduct, in terms of which a learner or the parent of a learner will apply to the governing body to be exempt from certain conditions in that code of conduct. Okay, so that is what you need to do. So when you are drafting or assisting your governing bodies to draft their codes of conduct, they must take that into consideration. Here's an exemption clause, because your parents sign for those code of conducts. I'm sure most of you do that on admission or whenever, right? They sign it. So you would have that exemption clause included there, so they would know if they have to make exemption what goes, what they need to do and what procedure they need to follow, right? So this is what happens. When you, let's just read this. It contains an exemption provision in terms of which a learner or the parent of a learner may apply to the governing body for exemption of that learner from complying with certain provisions of the Code of Conduct, right? And this is what you need to include. The exemptions will apply. It's not limited to this. It could be anything else. Depends on what the Constitution, depends on what the demographics of your school is, okay? So this is what you need to take into consideration. The cultural beliefs, religion observances or religious observances, and medical grounds. Now, there's a procedure. We spoke about the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act when we did the workshop in Lyndhurst, right? And with the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act, it talks about due process that must be followed. South Africa, a democratic state, the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act comes from the Constitution, Section 32 of our Constitution, which says, any decision we take, there is due process that we follow. So, when the parent makes application to the school, right? The school, on receiving the application, all this must be included in the Code of Conduct, right? The school or the governing body must communicate, must consider it, obviously, consider the application and communicate the decision it takes based on that application to the learner or the parent within 14 days. So we got time periods after receiving it. I'll tell you this now, we have lots, KZN is litigious, right? We're very litigious. Got my colleagues here from head office, they'll know. Okay, we're very litigious, okay? We're sitting with exorbitant claims, okay? And